really in the world as far as Terran beating Clem just earlier today. You were saying, Daiejo?
He did just beat Clem 2-0. So off to a great start here in the series. And yeah, playing for Kaiser Gaming. It is Oliveira. Bam.
On the bottom left-hand side, playing for Dragon Phoenix Gaming, it is Dark. Might be my favorite Zerg to watch.
Yeah, I can see why. He's very cool. Kind of
He's
has
very
his own style, and
He doesn't, he doesn't care. He doesn't care about
just
what
doesn't
anyone else is
care.
doing, you know?
yeah,
He just does his own thing. Like, he always makes sense. So it's just really fun because it's like, he's just not attached to the meta. He is one of those meta maker type players, right? And he has his own style. He really doesn't care. He makes an extra hatchery. Everyone's like, that's not good. He makes an extra pair of links. Everyone's like, that's not good. And yet, you know, he's one of the best in the world consistently for the last many years.
very consistently actually.
Yeah.
If only there weren't so many good foreigner Zergs to contend with, he would probably be the best Zerg for quite a while. I mean,
Yeah.
I think before him you had Rogue for a bit, and then there's Serral, then was Rainer. But this guy, he's never left like the podium, you know, the top 4 finishes. So
Yeah.
extremely consistent, and you gotta respect that. Also, on a side note, you might want to switch the scores to best of 3.
For sure. For sure.
Nice. Good. But yeah, so far, pretty standard stuff. I mean, Oliveira went for the SCV scouts, so just making sure it's not pull first, which is something Dark really likes to do really often, so it makes sense.
And yeah.
And
I love what Dark is doing as well with his gas here. He's just mining it with one drone and then prioritizes the transfer over to the natural expansion, which is something we see players do sometimes. But just recognizing that link speed is not really going to be super important in the early game in CVT, right? It's up until the point where Hellions are out, really, you don't really need it. So just prioritizing that extra bit of mineral income early on, I like.
yeah, this is definitely gonna give him a little boost. I think it's wow. Okay.
Whoa.
Somehow catches a drone there. Really good micro. Making me proud, that's for sure.
That's crazy. I mean, a drone kill this early on is massive, right? We're talking about just like how Dark is trying to be a little bit more efficient with his gas mining, not to get to the speed so fast in order to mine a little bit more minerals.
Game paused.
Lag,
Oh.
PP. Right? Right. I
felt
felt
it
the lag,
too,
yeah.
yeah.
Everybody felt the lag.
But yeah, I mean, 3cc build coming out of Oliveira here, which is even better because he's going to compound on top of the tiny little economic advantage he just got for himself in the early game.
Yeah, it's not even that tiny. I feel like it feels so bad to lose a drone that early that early into the game, right? Like, cause your economy, I mean, like at the point at which he loses it, it's like 5-10% of your economy, right? Like, I guess he has 24 workers now, so it's not quite as impactful as, but it's still like you can feel it for sure, right? Like as a player, like it's like everything's a little bit later, and it can really throw you off when things are just a few seconds later than what your internal clock tells you.
Yeah, maybe it's even why he's opted not to start his link speed just yet, just using the minerals to pump out more drones for now.
Very cool.
Still
very
no
cool.
link speed, even with 100 gas, so I
know it.
respect it, you know?
Respect.
It's a valid decision.
Yeah, I love it.
How it
Not just
looks
respect
like.
it, right? Like I think it's just such a cool adaptation.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no bias for sure.
no bias.
And meanwhile, I think Oliveira going to Banshee, which makes complete sense against a guy who really likes to play roaches. That's definitely a unit you want to have out on the map.
Yeah,
It's something
Dark
that doesn't
Roach.
shoot up.
I mean, Dark dropped that Roach Warren as well, pretty much at the same time as Oliveira was transferring over to start getting those Banshees. So good choice here from Oliveira. Definitely getting the better of this very early game here, but much still left to be
Indeed.
decided.
So he is going to go into 2 Banshees, as evidenced by that cloak. So very good. He's definitely going to need those. Question is, Okay, he is gonna go into bio as he already prepares for the tech lab on the barracks, and he still doesn't have his gases on the natural, which warrants that he wants to start his barracks sometime soon.
Yes, indeed. 8 roaches here on the side of Dark to deflect aggression. Does go back into droning right after, so very unlikely for him to commit. And a committed attack right now might be a death sentence for Dark, given that there would be 2 Banshees out. So I'm glad he's droning behind it. Still 8 roaches. You know, not an inexpensive commitment in this early game.
Indeed. And so far, he actually is opting to push across the map with the roaches. Maybe he just wants to scare him a little bit.
Yeah, but it's gonna backfire, right? Because the Banshees will be out. So if he continues, if he doesn't turn around but soon, I think he's gonna lose a lot of these roaches, and I'm not sure that he's gonna be able to find much damage. It's up to Oliveira now to close off his wall and do what he can to prevent any sort of damage. But Dark does turn around when Oliveira only shows 1 Banshee, so maybe Oliveira jumping the gun a little bit, right? Like maybe he could have waited for the other Banshee to join up with his Banshee, continue to let Dark push a little bit closer to him, and then go in with 2 to make the retreat really expensive.
Indeed. And he even opted to go for 8 Hellions instead of 6, which frankly are not going to be very useful against roaches, so maybe kind of hampering his own production a little bit.
I see. So you feel like on the back of those 8 Hellions then, it furthers the case for him letting Dark push a little bit further before showing the Banshees then?
Absolutely. You were right in saying he did jump the gun a little bit. Definitely could have gotten a few more roach kills if he was a little bit more patient.
Very sneaky though. Actually manages to cross the map while the Banshees are on his side. And now, I mean, Oliveira forced to evacuate here, not really pulling the Banshees back either, which means it's going to be Hellions against roaches on the other side. And one of these Banshees very likely to fall. One more hit from the Queen would have done it. Will not reach that far, but these roaches, I mean, they have managed to find something where they had no business finding anything, really.
Yeah, actually, they somehow managed to delay the mining from the 3rd base so much that he's actually mining from his own 4th base before Oliveira started mining from his 3rd.
Crazy. The roaches will finally
start indeed.
Yeah, they will finally be traded, but I mean a few of those Hellions go down, the stalled mining and some SCVs as well. All in all, Dark's gotta be pretty happy with that. Resources lost, of course, in favor of Oliveira. Dark does lose all of the roaches. But those, again, are roaches that kind of just had a not much of a purpose in this game anymore, right? Like, they were made to try to hit some sort of timing, hope that there wasn't Banshees. There was Banshees. So finding anything with them is just happy times for Dark. Nidus, what a nasty.
Yeah, I think they definitely paid themselves off. Now the question is, what does he want to do with this Nidus here? Is he going to try to Nidus the main while pushing into the 3rd with 1-1 Roach? Because that is a very nasty push. It's very difficult to hold as a Terran, especially if you don't see the Nidus coming.
Yeah, and I mean, we see there an Overlord on the side of the map, inching closer and closer towards sites, towards Time Oliveira's territory. And yeah, I think it's headed towards that main base that you're talking about. And you definitely want that Nidus, you definitely want the Queens, because otherwise the Banshees are just eventually gonna deal with the Roaches, and over time just get a little bit too much value. So very important for the Nidus to go down, and I think he will find a position. As I say that, the Oliveira drops an extra production structure that might give him a bigger heads up there.
He does indeed. Overlord in position. He has the vision for the Nidus already.
There it goes.
But Oliveira is doing a very good job of keeping Dark on his back foot at the 4th base. Dark says, I don't care. I'm just going to push through the front. And Oliveira gets completely caught out of position with no spotters for those roaches.
Yeah, and Nidus completely uncontested as well as a result. Oliveira having to look at 3 different prongs now, and Dark is just going to easily reinforce there with the roaches. The 2 medevacs are actually pulling back to try to defend, but that means that the Queens are going to be free to go into the Nidus, and Dark can also go into this Nidus to reinforce back into the main of Oliveira, as there is not really anything threatening. Oliveira will have to tap out, and Dark suddenly, as he often does, will take game number 1.
Kind of a stomp, really. I mean, Dark really assuring his dominance over there, showing why he was the world champion with the Nidus gameplay. That's kind of a classic. That's what he really likes to do, and yeah, just executed it here impeccably, and kudos to him. That was very difficult to hold. Even if Oliveira knew the Nidus was coming, I think it would have been really hard to hold. You would need a perfect split of your army.
Yeah,
Really
tanks covering
unfortunate.
each other and like just the Nidus, I mean, it had to be stopped, right? But the problem for Oliveira there is he has two medevacs on the other side. The Banshees not really in a position to start kind of working on the roaches before they cross the map. So those roaches again cross the map for free as well, right? Like, because they didn't have the Queen's aids either, right? So they should have been taxed a little bit, you have to imagine, but very difficult to do. Oliveira being hit on three different prongs, one by himself, right? Like one is the pressure that he's applying, but then Dark is pushing on two different fronts, so very difficult to readjust there for him. And yeah, Dark, I mean, he's ruthless, right? And the game looks like a stomp, but at the same time, it was a very committed timing attack. You know, it's the kind of thing where a lot of Dark games just tend to look like stomps, because if you don't hold it, you just die, right?
Yeah, and it's definitely one of the most frustrating things. Also, he really doesn't care about your theory, because in theory, Hellion Banshee should be Hellion Banshee 3cc should be a great opener against the Roach push. But Dark just doesn't care. He sees Banshees, he goes back, and once the Banshees come to harass him, he's like, okay, now I go back again. What are you gonna do? And that's exactly what happens. Oliveira got his third base delayed for quite a while. He actually lost quite a few Hellions to the Roaches. That was just frustrating for him.
Yeah, and I think that's what separates Dark from so many, if not pretty much every Zerg player. I think that's what Dark does best. We were talking about Cham and how he does well with his units yesterday. I think that Dark is like Cham on steroids, basically, where his unit, not just control, but decision making is just so great at all points in time, because he's actively thinking about the game and actively looking for opportunities, actively really playing the Zerg reactive style, right? He's not the type of Zerg that just sits back and executes on his plan. While he's executing on his plan, he's gonna look for openings, and anything that you give him, he will exploit. So it must be just so frustrating and difficult to play against Dark.
I can tell you from experience, it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've had the privilege of getting destroyed by him at the BlizzCon that I qualified, so I can assure you it's not fun. And Oliveira probably not too happy in his place right now, but he has a chance to turn things around here in Greysvan in Game 2.
Let's see if he's able to do that. As in the top left-hand side for Kaisi Gaming, it is Oliveira from Korea.
From Korea?
From China. Oliveira.
And coming from Korea, it is actually Dark.
From Peru.
From Peru.
Peruvian Pride Dark.
Oh, wouldn't that be something?
That would be something.
I do miss a Peruvian world champion.
I don't think we ever had one, Diego.
He did.
We did?
Yeah, he won an IEM.
Phoenix?
Yeah.
I guess.
Counts as a world champion.
I don't know about that. I guess.
No?
I wouldn't count any of Phoenix victories.
Why?
I don't know. It just, it just doesn't count.
You did. Okay.
Oliveira, however, very powerful. He's gonna have to be more powerful than Dark, though. That's a tall order. Then let's not forget he started last game by killing a drone as well. Dark already adapting in that early game, delaying his link speed ×2 to stabilize his economy. That is the sort of trickery that he goes for. I mean, yeah, the Roaches being sneaky after the Banshees are found. And then that Nidus triple prong, not really caring about his opponent having the quote-unquote counter, right? And that's where you can let your guard down as a Terran as well. It's like, like you're not accounting for what's supposed to be accounted for, but Dark just makes you. He's just so unpredictable.
And speaking of unpredictability, this time he did opt for a much faster link speed than last game. Actually just mined 100 gas right away for it. But Oliveira also, adjusting a little bit his game plan, decided not to go for the SCV scout and also got a reactor on his barracks right away. No marine. And he stopped mining gas actually. He took one SCV away from the gas to get an even faster third base. just really focusing on that economy right now.
All right. So from what you've told me, I would imagine this slightly favors Oliveira, right? It seems like Dark is adapting and trying to catch like a 2 Hellion run by or something like that with a quick link speed. Instead, he's going to run into a turret that is being greedy, where he is cutting down on his greed to get that slightly faster tech. Of course, like very minimal, but would you agree with that? Or
Indeed, especially because there aren't going to be any Hellions on the map. Instead, Oliveira is going to opt to go for 2-1-1. So if Dark decides to push with Lings, all he's going to find is a bunch of Marines sitting nice and safe and tucked away in his natural. He's not going to make any more Lings, so there definitely won't be any success against those Marines as long as they're microed correctly.
yeah. I mean, I would put it past the Dark. Like, but Bailing Bust is a strategy.
That is true, but he did stop mining gas, and
Yeah,
I
he did
think
stop mining gas.
yeah, probably only wants to focus on drones in the near future.
How
Even
do
if
you
he started
feel? How do
bailing
you
gas right
feel?
now.
How do you feel about Bailing busting 2-on-1 though?
I'm not a big fan, to be honest, because
Mhm.
if they scout it, if they know it's coming,
Yeah,
you can just like SimCity your way into a victory.
that is very true. Yeah, it has to be kind of a surprise. And
Yeah, and I feel like if you're the superior player going into this, you know, no need to take such a gamble. If you want to be aggressive, maybe just do another Roach build. but
yeah,
not
he doesn't even
something
have the
so
information
gambling.
either, right? Like it's not like he had the information really early on of all this happening on Times Camp, so not really.
True,
an
he
option
still
in this game.
doesn't. Now he's gonna see it.
Okay.
Link goes up. He spots quite a few Marines up the ramp and the barracks on the reactor. So
How do you feel
He
about
doesn't
a
know for
Widow
sure.
Mine with the 2-1-1?
I love it.
It's not
That's
happening
why you
here, though.
usually go. Well, sometimes you make it with your second batch of medevacs.
Okay.
So you make like a third medevac, and then you add 1 Widow Mine and 6 Marines later on. But
Okay.
we'll see if he opts to do that,
So
which he won't.
What I do when I play Terran is I add a Widow Mine for the first batch, so that way I have like extra Marines for the second batch, right? Like, and then you can add supplement the second batch with a, because I feel like the second batch of medevacs comes out before you have the Marines to fill it up. No?
Yeah. Which is why it makes sense also to add a Widow Mine.
In the
You have
yeah,
free space in your-
that's why I added to both. Yeah, fill it
that
up.
works. But I guess Oliveira instead just gonna opt to go into the normal play, which is just to add a reactor
The
to the
classic.
factory right away.
The Widow Mine would have been so nasty
Whoa, whoa.
here. Great micro there from Oliveira.
That was fantastic, actually. I mean, he did lose quite a few Marines, but still, definitely in favor of Oliveira killing all of those links. Dark is not even that ahead economically. If you look at his drone count, his third base is not even fully saturated yet.
No, definitely. I mean, that is the kind of wraparound that Dark or any Zerg would expect to kill the Marines or force a retreat onto the medevacs, right? But Oliveira recognizing that he can actually kite that and fight that, and it's a very close call, right? Like when that many Marines are falling and the Queens are that close by, it is such a close call to decide I don't need to load up, because really just a couple of extra link shots or a couple of Queens contributing, and all of a sudden you're trading terribly. So both players kind of taking a risk, but I like it when both players decide, oh, okay, this is a fight I can take, and then in this case the underdog is the one that ends up being correct about it.
Yeah. So really glad to see this by Oliveira. So he's actually not afraid to pull out moves like these, to showing the bold player that he is, not afraid to make these kind of plays. I really like that about him, and I'm glad he's bringing it to this game. He does attempt to drop in the main, but Queens are already there to defend it. One of the medevacs are too low to drop. So right now, just kind of gearing up into Bio Widow Mine play against Hydra Bane.
Yeah, not intimidated at all is Oliveira as he pushes forward and scans to just continue to clear some creep. So he's getting rid of creep on 2 different areas. This time around he will have to load to avoid the Baneling shots. The Widow Mine could have been a little bit juicier, only connects onto Zerglings. But the Banelings are nearby and slow, so you gotta be a little bit careful. Oh, the target fire! Daejo,
Mamma mia.
Oliveira
was-
pulling all the moves. Oh no, the medevac! That's the low medevac,
Oh
my
no,
boy, my
not into
boy!
the main. Ah,
Mistake.
okay, I think that evens it up a little bit, but look at this run by. It's gonna catch a few drones, I think. He can fight these lanes. There's nothing to be afraid
I
of.
don't know. They're pretty low, those Marines, but the Banelings are kind of straying far behind, so that allow for some more trades before Oliveira has to pick back up. Another medevac ended up falling by the looks of that, or by the sound of that of that happening. And yeah, I mean, it still looks pretty even here. I like Oliveira's position maybe a little bit better. Like, the creep is receding. Dark doesn't have very much map control. What do you think, Tayejo?
I think Oliveira definitely has the upper hand here. I mean, look at Dark's drone count. It just went up to 81 again. They're still transferring to the 4th base. Meanwhile, taking these great trades with Widow Mines. Great fight by Oliveira so far. And yeah, like you said, the creep, that's a really important thing that you need to have, especially playing Hydra Bane. That's just something that's not out on the map right now, nowhere.
Yeah, Oliveira, I mean, he did a good job. Like, when he was clearing the creep, I was thinking to myself, I didn't say it out loud, so this is kind of like gut punching myself, but I was thinking, is it really necessary to clear creep on both sides, right? And I think the answer is clearly yes, because he's taking it to that 4th base, right? Like, he's not going for like 3 base, much less like a 2 base timing like we've seen a lot from Korean Terrans in recent history. Because if that was the case, you just want to maintain like map control in one general area and try to end it with a swift punch. But Oliveira, looking for 2 prongs of creep consistently, has made it so that Dark's map is really small here.
Yeah, I'm missing a little bit of the Widow Mine reinforcements. They just haven't been there, so it's been difficult to trade efficiently. But there was a Widow Mine drop there that didn't kill that many drones, but did pull the drones away from the mineral line, forcing a lot of lost mining time. I'm afraid for this medevac that will run into
a dragon.
That's one way to deal with the drop, I guess. These drones kind of derping here, kind of an uncharacteristic mistake by Dark.
Yeah, he will fix it here. 25 workers still there in that base, though, probably as a result of him not knowing that he was adding workers onto that base because they were chasing each other. Still, one of those workers is tagged onto another, so Dark sloppy here, unsaturated in the gas on that base. Yeah, he needs to recompose and gather his strength back. Oliveira looking very strong on the other side, right? Looking very organized. No chaos on his side of the map. Things are looking good for the Chinese Terran.
He's really playing really well here, already setting up his 5th base. On a side note, you want to update the scores again, Cats?
Oh, sheesh.
Coolio.
Thank you.
Problem. Yeah, but Dark already going to Hive, which is where his, I feel like he's the most powerful. He's really known for that late game control. And already getting Infestors, which frankly I think is his favorite unit after the Roach. So definitely a unit that...
So like that's some of my bias coming from that. I feel like only Dark and Serral really, sometimes Scarlet, like use Infestors like very consistently at a high level, like where they get them because of their value. Like it feels like a lot of other Zergs just kind of skip them, and I'm never sure why.
Yeah, I think it's just sometimes it can feel like a difficult unit to use, especially when you're trying to shark them around with the burrow infestors like Dark usually does. But when you pull it off, it feels so freaking powerful.
Yeah,
I'm really glad that Dark is gonna be bringing them out sometime soon. I do wonder what his tech path will be in Hive though, because but the engagement is already coming.
That's a big engagement. I mean, there's a few tanks set up here and a corner that Dark has to turn. All in all, a little bit of a wash. Oliveira will end up on the lower end of supply after those trades, but I mean, he is pumping out ghosts. The tanks are coming out. Like his army's looking stronger and stronger. It's not just Marines out here, so he's trading up in terms of tech. So is Dark though, with 4 Vipers now on the way. But this might be the strong timing for Oliveira before those Vipers can gather much energy.
Yeah, definitely gonna need those Vipers ASAP. They're gonna have to consume a little bit before they can abduct. But yeah, like I said, there are no lurkers, no ultras on the way, probably because he's too broke to afford any of that on 4 bases. So yeah, the Hive really is only for the Vipers in this case. It's even ambitious that he's getting so many upgrades at the same time while he's getting pressured this hard.
Yeah.
I'm curious to see how he's gonna hold this off.
it's gonna be difficult. I mean, to the credit of Oliveira, though, but I can't fault Dark for not wanting to fall behind, right? Like, he's setting himself a win condition if he holds. So I like what you're saying in terms of him not going for ultras, not going for something like Brute Lords right now, right? Like, he has to stabilize first. He has to push his opponent off his side of the map, and as soon as he does that, he will drop the Lurker then. So now looking for transitions when Oliveira has finally been pushed back a little bit. I love the pressure that Oliveira has been keeping up, though, because it has made Dark kind of claustrophobic and kind of like pick and choose what upgrades he can and cannot get right now.
Indeed. And honestly, I love Oliveira's infrastructure here. It just looks beautiful when you have this many buildings just kind of set up in a defensive way, but also preparing you for that economic advantage that Terran has when he starts setting up that many orbital bases, while still at the same time canceling one more of Dark's bases. Really well done by him. And Dark is finally starting to get that creep out on the map a little bit. Still having all those queens alive really helps for this. But he's gonna have to push it out a little bit more if he wants to transition into lurkers.
Yeah, and I absolutely love the way that Oliveira has chosen to split the map as well, like going vertically instead of horizontally. I think that this is probably just the way to go, right? Like, the watchtowers do such a great job of covering all 6 of his bases with just 2 watchtowers, which seems like insane value to me. And from his 7th base, he will be able to start sieging Dark from a high ground as well. So I love this.
Yeah, and these are new patch sensor towers, so post nerf they are shorter than they used to be. So very well done by him. Good job. I think these Hydras should be able to clean this drop up, I should hope.
Yep.
Meanwhile, on the other side, this does get fended off. Do you think maybe Oliveira played a bit too conservative now that he already started his transition into mech?
I think he definitely played conservative about like 3 to 4 minutes ago. Like when we were talking about Dark's lack of upgrades or lack of like ultra-less cavern and transitioning into Brute Lords and such, I felt like that was Oliveira's opportunity to try to make something happen with the army that he had. And Dark pushed him back, but I'm not sure that Oliveira needed to respect Dark as much as he did, right? I think he could have stayed out on the map a little bit more, reinforced there. And, yeah.
And now his army is really quite strong. He's going to that ultimate composition of like ghost mech-ish with a little bit of bio army. That is really where Terran shines in the late game in their cost-efficient trades. But it also feels a little bit like he missed his window to kind of kill Dark when he had that big of an advantage. But look at Dark. He's already making plays. This is the kind of stuff you only see Dark do in competitive, which is really, really cool.
Yeah, lurker drops are so obnoxious, right? Like, yeah, I'm a huge advocate for lurker drops in CVT and CVP because they will just ping your screen everywhere and it's so difficult to deal with. For Terran in particular, you need to save scans, you need to run around, and it's not easy. It's much lower effort for the lurker dropping player to just drop lurkers and burrow them than for Terran to deal with even just 2 lurkers burrowed anywhere, right? So when we are talking about like this later game type engagements, like attention is such a precious and valuable resource, and the attention spent on the Zerg side is just so low by comparison that I love this play. Good turrets though from Oliveira. We'll see if it can catch some of those before they do too much.
Yeah. Dark looks at the Nidus and he says, "Not this time, my friend." It does actually start one, but instead, these overlords are going to be way more effective in their surprise elements. Usually, at least with the Nidus, you have a little bit of a warning that is coming. But the drop is going to happen instantly. Yeah.
The problem for Dark, though, is he's probably going to have to forfeit this base, right? Because he won't have the full brunt of his army here to defend. And this is a base that, like I was talking about earlier, Oliveira sieging comfortably while defending his freshest 7th base. So, I mean, that terrain is super difficult for Dark. Here comes the punch, and it's going to be a lot of lurkers onto the production of Oliveira. So it's going to be very difficult to dislodge. I would love for one of these Overlords to turn around and go to a different mineral line, but instead Dark is just going to hold here onto the production side of Oliveira, reinforcing as well with a Nidus. Completely nasty. The tank tries to siege to target the Nidus. The Marauder siege or changes his focus onto the Lurkers, but now the Ghosts are here in timely fashion, and Oliveira, I mean, he might be doing it. The Nidus does not manage to go up, and he will get cleaned up, Dark that is, as Oliveira responds promptly. On the other side, Dark is trying to capitalize by running some Banelings onto planetary fortresses and tanks, but that's never going to be too efficient of a trade. Does manage to dislodge and push Oliveira back, but he has already lost his base on the low ground. So Daejo, I would say a wonderful minute or two for Oliveira.
That was actually fantastic defense by Oliveira. Really well microed on the Ghost. Sometimes when the Lurkers take up siege positions like that, it can be extremely difficult for you to get the snipes that you need without getting cancelled by the Lurker shots. But he actually pulled off a spectacular job, also defending his base on the other side.
Good spread of tanks as well here. The Vipers are still going to be able to find most of those, as Dark carves a little bit of a space, but it's just Hydras here. No real sieging units. One tank remaining in the back will also manage to fend off. And Oliveira, I mean, the only awkward thing for Oliveira now is Dark is not even trying to take that expansion on the low ground anymore, and he shouldn't, right? So right now, if you're Oliveira, oh, he is trying to take that expansion. Okay, well, that gives Oliveira something to do.
Yeah, but as long as they're both mining the same amount of bases, then it should be okay for Oliveira. The only base he cannot let Dark mine from is the one that's next to his third. Yeah. So as long as he doesn't let that one, it's okay. He's fine. He's scanning to make sure there's no Broodlord switch, which is the only thing that would destroy him if he got caught off guard.
Yeah, right now I'm feeling like either or is fine for Oliveira, right? Because the mining hasn't really begun on the bottom base either. Very good abducts here from Dark, however. Gonna get rid of a lot of those Liberators. So now an avenue opened onto the main of Dark through the triangle third there, or onto the main of Oliveira through the triangle third, could be what Dark looks to do, because, yeah, I mean, definitely weakening the position there a little bit. I hope that command center morphs into a planetary fortress, but Dark giving himself some options here on the reinforce on the double down.
Yeah, and I mean, both players still have more money than you know what to do with. The question is, what is Dark gonna spend his on? Of course, he only has a certain amount of time where he can keep pumping units like this before he starts to mine out. So ideally, you want to break the Terran before you get to the mine out scenario, but easier said than done, right? That is the most difficult part of ZVT, is actually breaking the Terran.
Yeah, Oliveira has so far traded effectively by a margin of 6,000. The Vipers are doing a really good job for Dark, however, to try to mitigate those circumstances as they keep abducting Liberators for free. The Lurkers overextending a little bit here on the potential snipes as the Liberators try to kind of zone off, but they get abducted every time, right? So that is, I don't know, is it even worth it to make those Liberators, Diego? I think so, but what is Oliveira doing wrong here?
I think he's doing okay. Even though it looks like he's not trading spectacularly, at least they're even. So it should be fine as long as he doesn't let Dark mine from his bases. Then in the end, as long as they mine the same amount of resources, he just needs to be slightly more efficient than Dark, which he's been doing so far. One thing he could do differently is maybe try to sneak some ghosts around cloaked and try to EMP the Vipers before they get abducts in.
That would be nifty. Because, yeah, like, I feel like the only point of contention here for Oliveira is that his Liberators are getting sniped pretty regularly by the Vipers. Like, pretty regularly, they're not accomplishing their goal, and that's keeping the cost efficiency relatively close, right? To where it feels like Dark over time could come back, but maybe not. I mean, it's looking pretty difficult, and Oliveira has done a good job of denying at least one of the bases. Now looking to float here to the top, and like I said, on this map, and looking at it split, it looks really good for Terran. I'm not gonna lie, because both of these bases are led to from a high ground. There's always a high ground leading to these bases, and that has to be good for tanks, right?
There are definitely many good places for tanks, as evidenced here. Even the wall-offs with the orbitals are working great for Oliveira. It does lose one, which kind of sucks, but honestly, this is actually not bad for Dark.
Yeah.
It's still not the cost-efficient trade that he's looking for in this case, but managing to like break a position like this from Oliveira taxes his APM a lot to like replenish it a little bit. He's gonna have to put more Liberators, more tanks here in the future.
Yeah.
That gives Dark kind of a window to maybe like maneuver around and kill the CC, for example.
Yeah, and that's something that Dark already did earlier at the triangle as well, right? So 2 weakened positions, you could argue, on the side of Oliveira that he may not have replenished. And yeah, I think that Dark maybe is looking for a different condition to win this game than just outright trying to out-efficiency his opponent, right? He's trying to give himself an entry point where he can just bust through, and that has to be either here or on the position that we just saw. Here he worked on earlier. There's a couple of Liberators, but again, they'll be taken down pretty cost efficiently. Another one very easy to take down as well. And without a planetary fortress here, I mean, it's very difficult to withhold this position without enough tanks. So Oliveira having to pull a lot of his army back, but those were definitely cost-efficient trades for Dark. So maybe still looking for you know, an option back into cost efficiency as well as a win condition.
Yeah, and if that's what you're looking for, then Vipers are definitely the name of the game. Being able to get those abducts on units for free. Definitely doing a good job there. That was like 1,000 resources worth of Liberators he just picked for himself. And honestly, Oliveira, for example, trading resources just to clear creep is also another example of how things are kind of swinging back in Dark's favor just by spreading creep.
Yeah, for sure.
Good for him.
Yeah, 200 resources there for that nuke, of course. So he won't be getting refunded for that. I do like nukes if you make them in plenty in the late game just to send alerts, because the late game can be so hectic. If you're looking to do something behind the nuke, right, where your opponent's going to be looking everywhere and then you do something, I kind of appreciate that. But to clear creep, I'm just never a fan of that. Regardless, Dark is going to flood in here and look for a planetary fortress. It's going to be pretty costly. However, with the Liberators already preset, I understand the intention there with the creep as far forward as it was, but he will have to kind of just give up this position, and he has already been pushed back from the bottom, the 6 o'clock position as well. So Dark in a lot of trouble, a lot of pressure to make something happen, and he's going to choose this position that he weakened earlier to try and do that. As the Infestors flood on through, the tanks will be taken care of. The Vipers are running into one of those turrets, but for the most part, I mean, he should be able to breach this planetary fortress potentially not long for this world. The Baning's not really managing to connect onto the Ghosts, as one Infestor at a time will go in the front to try to get those fungals off without risking all of them getting EMP'd, and that's going to be enough actually to even save the planetary fortress, surprisingly.
It felt like Dark was so close to breaking Oliveira there. I mean, he even got great fungals on the Ghost towards the end. But the problem is he just kind of ran out of steam. There were no units to connect together with the fungals. And just like no lurkers, no banelings left. And he wasn't even able to kill the planetary. So resources-wise, a great trade for Oliveira. And he also secured a planetary fortress and turrets on the top side. This is still alive on the bottom side. He's been doing a great job of rebuilding. And honestly, I can see why his family works in construction, because it's just spectacular.
Love it. But yeah, I mean, Dark really running low on options now. He's got now his only approach, I feel like, to get back into this game is exactly what he's doing right now, which is just try to break your opponent. However, this time around, Oliveira has most of his forces concentrated on this side. So if this is ever not to go well for Dark, it should be now. He recognizes that. That's a few too many units, and he's gonna back away to try to find a different angle, but he has to find an angle now. There is no longer a cost efficiency war that he could ever win, as he is nearly trailing 10,000 resources behind. And with the 12 o'clock and the 6 o'clock potentially both going to Oliveira in the long run, Dark has to end this game soon or die.
Indeed, he is kind of running out of time, even though his bank is quite high. His bases are mining out. You can already see on the minimap quite a few of them running out of resources. So he needs to do something, because he's not even mining from the bottom base, which is technically supposed to be his own. So this is definitely a no-no in the Zerg late game book. But he is opting to stay on.
I just don't see how you take those though, like a Zerg, right? Can you please admit that the Zerg Cabal messed up on this one?
Well, I think the Zerg Cabal tried to buff the Broodlords, which is not a unit we have seen this game. maybe that there is a case to be made for Dark going into Broodlords. But also, at least on the other hand, Oliveira has been doing a really good job of scanning to make sure there are no Broodlords catching him by surprise.
Yeah, maybe. I think that both of those expansions at the 12 and 6 being on the low ground is just so nifty good for a turn split. For a turn split map. Like, I just don't see how Dark ever holds that base, right? Because Oliveira can just siege from his high ground, and then what do you do? Broodlords, I guess, is what you're saying?
Yeah. Honestly, I feel like that's the only way. Broodlords, a wall of spores, some infestors, a couple vipers, and then you just try to out-micro the Terran.
But Lambo the King told me that that Thors are stronger than before against Broodlords now.
True, but Lambo the King is also
In
the
the
leader
Cabal.
of the Cabal.
That's a very good point.
Wow, those are great abducts, by the way.
Really good.
That was like 5 units you just caught for free.
Yeah. Another burst
If
sighting
he
on the
keeps this
Liberator.
going, maybe he can catch up.
No way.
They're
Jose.
only 6k resources apart now.
Oh wow,
And they were like
he
10k.
You're right. Yeah, he did make up for like 4,000 resources there. But I mean, even then, he has to secure the bottom right-hand side or the 6 o'clock base, which I guess Oliveira's kind of letting him do, right? Like, he's very concerned about where the army of Dark is, and maybe infinite scans are gonna start working against them in the sense that knowing where the army is, if he continues to mirror it, Dark is pretty happy with Oliveira sitting where he is right now because that frees this base up. Oliveira's gonna have a Liberator to speak on his behalf here, killing 3 workers, but not much more. I mean, stalling the mining is not bad.
Yeah, definitely speaking the language of freedom here on Oliveira's behalf as he tries to liberate the space. Dark is going to be able to defend it only after losing a few drones. But I feel like...
The MP on the Overseer is very cute, actually.
Yeah. Ooh, good fungals, though.
Very
I mean,
good.
EMPs does catch all of the Vipers, so they are going to have to go back and consume.
And Dark will have to
Yeah.
evacuate that area. I love the MP on the Overseers because Overseers are kind of the Zerg scan at this stage of the game, right? Like, you want to pump a bunch of those changelings and just send them everywhere and keep tabs on your opponent in that fashion. So that is why I think we see Dark make so many Overseers. And yeah, I mean, EMP, you wouldn't think it's like, oh yeah, that's the unit, I got EMP. But if they're all clumped up, I think a great job from Oliveira there identifying that is a target worthwhile. One EMP worth of energy.
Oh yeah. I mean, after you spent like 30 seconds of your time right-clicking changelings
Exactly.
in the late game,
Yeah.
you are definitely going to change your mind about the EMP.
Right. Yeah, here come those changelings. So annoying.
Look at
And
them.
they're going to give vision to Dark. So those changelings, again, acting as the scan for the Zerg player. Knows that there's no ghost nearby. And therefore the Vipers feel a little bit friskier. This Lurker's not being tended to, now being burrowed at the back of the base, but that's not going to be enough to defend it. So a good job from Oliveira here, continuing to stall Dark, who is continuing to close that gap. 6,000 resources between them in terms of cost efficiency. But
no.
Oliveira has now mined considerably more. That poor thing.
Poor Ghost does end up at the wrong place at the wrong time. But on the other hand, Dark taking not that great of a fight, although these fungals might be able to switch it around.
Yeah, I mean, I was looking at that fight and I was like, yeah, this is an overcommitment from Dark. Sure gets the base, but overall that can't be cost efficient. And it wasn't, but those fungals really kind of not just damaging the ghosts and killing a couple, but also keeping them away from the Lurkers. And just as Dark runs out of fungal, he chooses to evacuate the position. That could have been a million times worse, right? Like, if those fungals don't land, all of those Lurkers are dead to snipes.
Yeah, I mean, they're really trading blow for blow here. Still at 6k resources
Weekend.
lost.
Oop. And yeah, now those softened up ghosts from the prior fungals, a couple of them are going to fall, so continued even-ish trades. Now Oliveira with an 8,000 resource lead all day.
Alright, so does increase his lead a little bit. He is going to have cancel this base once again, unless Dark has something to say about it. But instead, Dark says, no, I'm just going to go for your base up here. That's fine. Tries to get a few abducts on these tanks and the Liberators, but the turrets are doing a great job of sniping these Vipers.
Yeah, that's big. Even having to use... Oh, that's a little bit of a misclick. Even just not clicking in between the turrets made it so that he had to use 2 Blinding Clouds. for 2 turrets, and that's gonna take a lot of steam out of these Vipers and their attack, right? Like Dark, he doesn't have an infinite gas bank anymore. He has 5,000 resources banked in terms of minerals, but his gas bank is gonna run low enough that making 10 Infestors and 3 Vipers at a time is not gonna be sustainable, right? So you gotta start being a little bit more careful that energy is an extra unit while you are in that position. So you know, you have to be really careful. And the turrets, like you said, doing a wonderful job there. Dark has to keep on the aggression, has to try to kill this base somehow, has to try to take his base on the 6 o'clock somehow. I mean, it's such a difficult game for the Zerg from here on out.
Indeed. This is the moment where you really need to ration every single resource that you have. Even though your bank is quite high, you can see the numbers are not going up because there's simply not that many resources out on the map anymore. And one thing Dark absolutely does not want to let Oliveira do is take both bases.
Good
the
abduct.
north and the south.
Very good abducts. Also, the Vipers there finally getting EMP'd. The Fungal not there in time to answer, so 2 Fungals will be whiffed. Hellions just kind of heading towards their death. And yeah, Oliveira is at 165 supply and doesn't have the bank that Dark has. So I think that there could be an opening here for Dark to try to punch Oliveira in the face as hard as he can and maybe break, because over time Oliveira is still trading more cost effectively. He is still securing that extra base, right? If Dark can't breach, and it's very difficult to breach with Infestors, by the way, Oliveira will continue to just replenish with very high quality units every single time. And that is why he's not maxed out, right? It's because he's making the cream of the crop.
Exactly. He's really focusing on having the best unit comp possible, which he can definitely afford to. He just needs a little bit of time to produce it. But slowly and steadily getting there, and already starting to mine from that base, so time is in his favor. Not even pun intended anymore, because he's now Oliveira. But yes,
yeah,
absolutely looking good for him. I would really like to be Oliveira in his shoes right here.
Yeah,
and once he finally mines out his base, he could even start working towards the bottom base, to be honest. All he has to do is defend.
Yeah, he has done such a great job of kind of defending that bottom base with very little. And Dark feels pressure to go for this top base because splitting the map is not a win condition if you haven't traded cost efficiently, right? So for Dark, he has to continue to look for trades more so than securing a base. And he has the bank to, you know, to maybe remax one more time or at least lose a few units. So if he can continue to find value with his Vipers exactly as he is doing, and then carve his way into deny this base, that is the opportunity that Dark is looking for. Oliveira kind of donating some of these Liberators.
Yeah, he does have to be a little bit careful against the Vipers. There's not that many of them, but still, each abduct is instant value for them, as they will go back and regenerate their energy by consuming these evil chambers that Dark has built. Look at how many Vipers there are now. Holy moly.
Holy guacamole. And this nuke I do like, because this position has been so great for Dark. I mean, it's been a masterclass of positioning this entire map from both players, and how you can abuse those high ground positions, especially come the late game, to try to siege those lower ground bases, right? Like I was talking about how Terran has an easier time sieging from their natural 7th base onto the low ground for the potential Zerg, but Dark has been doing the same thing here with this Viper Lurker Spore contain that he has here, where it's difficult for Oliveira to gain the knowledge to have scans at all points in time, and so the Vipers from the high ground keep getting value in sniping these stores, these tanks, these Liberators.
Indeed. And honestly, after losing all of the energy on the Viper and spending a bunch of the energy on the Infestors, he decides to go in, which is kind of a questionable decision.
I don't know, it's links for tanks, I like it, right? Like, it's not like he's risking most of his very expensive units. These Vipers do have to be careful, all of them! A couple of them will survive thanks to the patch. Hail the Zerg Cabal.
The patch does come in handy here as a few of the Vipers get saved, but still, he did trade a lot of units for a few tanks. Resources lost, still looking like an 8k, or maybe even 7k lead for Oliveira, but yeah, this is so even actually.
It is actually getting a little bit crazy. I mean, Dark definitely trading cost effectively in this late game, right? A very, very difficult thing to do, especially against the composition that Oliveira has, but it really has been a masterclass in positioning. The problem for Dark is Oliveira is mining that extra base. Dark is not, and Oliveira is actually taking the 6 o'clock as well. So Dark now having to worry about 2 different fronts, and he is making 32 circlings, which I imagine have to flood towards the 6 o'clock right now, or he's gonna be in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, he definitely needs something, some reinforcement, some way to try and help to break this, because like we said, he is on a timer. He's desperate to break to this position. But look at this. There's Liberators, there's tanks, there's Ghosts. This is unbreakable.
Yeah, unbreakable. And the Infestors were mostly out of energy there, so he had like, 3 more Fungals with some Infestors in the back. But I think he sees the 6 o'clock position as well, and it's going to be impossible from that point on. Beautiful game from both players. Again, in the late game, Dark was actually trading efficiently against a Terran with the most efficient army that you can get for Terran. So very impressive to them, especially without those Brittlers that you were talking about.
Yeah. I mean, we were wondering at the start of the late game when we said maybe Time played a bit too conservative. Maybe he should have tried and killed Dark after that big lead that he got.
Yeah.
But he kind of proved like how mature of a Terran he is right now, where he's just willing to take it to the late game, instead of risking ending it and maybe throwing away his lead. He's like, okay, I'm confident in my late game. I'll take it there. I'll prepare my transition with tanks and Hellbats, and he did a phenomenal job. I'm very proud of him. It looked very good.
Yeah, he did fantastic. And again, I think utilizing the map as well to the fullest potential, I think that the expansion pattern that he chose and that he carved himself was very much geared towards splitting the map in the way that he ended up doing. And it gave him great positional advantages, right? Like just to deny that low ground base from Dark for the longest time and then take it to the late game, basically force it to the late game in a map that's so easily split, seemingly. So well done by Oliveira.
Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw quite a few more late games on Grace Van. So
yeah,
looking forward to more games on that map.
Same.
I like the late games DVZs, especially if they're played like this without Broodlords. They feel very action packed.
Mm-hmm. Do you feel like most Terran players right now would split the map vertically or horizontally on Grace Van? Like, do you think that's a new development from Oliveira, or is it something that you were already doing in your games?
I think I would need more experience in it to say for sure, but initially it does feel like vertically would be the correct split.
It feels like it from watching that game for me. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It just feels natural with the pathing of the units to walk around that way.
Lovely. Okay, well, map number 3 will be Neo-Humanity, the smallest map in the map pool. Some trickery achievable via minerals, perhaps. Dark, I wouldn't put it past them, but unlikely that we'll see something like that. There's also a Ridge Vespin Geyser base that's a little bit forward. Less likely to come into play in this particular matchup. But yeah, I don't know. Who do you like on this map? Is it a Sir Cabal map? Is it a more Terran-friendly map given the distance?
I think usually this is more of a Terra map because it's very easy to split, first of all. So if we get to another late game, Time might have a comfortable time, or Oliveira might have a comfortable time just reinforcing that defensive position. And also, I really like the things you can pull off. It's kind of a gimmicky map. You need to mine minerals to get to your linear third. So maybe there's something you can pull off with tanks. Also, Atrax is very good on this map from personal experience. So a lot of things you can do as a Terran. I'll definitely give him the edge.
All right. On the Zerg side of things, there's definitely rocks that can be broken to make the map much more wide open in the middle. So that could be a helpful thing for Dark to look into. And
indeed.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a huge difference, right? Like breaking those rocks in the TVC matchup. I think that Cyril is probably the most proactive player when it comes to breaking down rocks that benefit him. But I think if Dark gets a little bit of a breather, he'll definitely get onto it early enough.
Indeed. It looks like Oliveira once again not going to go for a CC first. Not really a big fan of that, at least not against Dark. I like it. I'm curious if he's going to do... Well, he should do a CV Scout, and that's because on this map, if you do an SCV Scout, you can block the only possible hatchery they can take.
Oh, big. I see.
In theory, and actually sometimes Lambo does this, is they take the hatchery on the other side and just start mining the gold minerals as soon as their natural finishes.
Right.
But even still, I think that's a decent enough advantage for Terran.
It's big. Yeah, you have to go around. Yeah, you have to go around with the drone. And, you know, that'll make it so that you're dropping your hatchery a little bit later as well. Not as familiar with the timings. Have some mining time lost as well. And then you got to mine those minerals, which are also inefficient to mine for 4 trips. So, yeah, I think definitely a good idea to SCV scout here.
So he is going to, like I said, block that third base. And I guess we'll see if Dark opts to just take the late third once the link speed finishes, or if he's going to walk the green. Oh, wow, okay.
But I feel like you almost would want to mine with those 2 drones instead, or even use 3 drones if you're gonna be sending the drone in this path. No, like look, it's already done with 1 mineral patch. So with the second drone, you would have been done with both mineral patches, right? So
yeah, but I guess you're not really in a rush to mine those out just yet, because eventually once your queen comes out, then you can just comfortably mine again with 1 drone. It's not like the Reaper can punish you for it, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, I just wonder, like, in terms of cost efficiency, like, I think it's a minimal difference either way. But the drone going around, to me, feels more wasteful than just having used 2 drones from the beginning and then sending one of those 2 drones with the rich minerals to the base. Because it's just 4 trips.
Yeah, might be an optimal thing that Zergs could look into in the future. Maybe you could coach them cats. Like you coach Sue in GSL.
Oof.
Oof. By the way, Dark got an instant scout on Oliveira's 3rd CC. So he can play as greedy as he wants right here.
He could also punish if he wants. Looking for the punish, perhaps dropping a Roach Warren potentially out of the range of some of the more common scans as well. So, I mean, Oliveira is going for the Banshee. The classic. So, do you think Dark commits here? Probably not, right?
I should hope not. I mean, we might see a repeat of what happened in the first game. But the difference is that I feel like on this map, there's less space for you to maneuver around the Banshees. On Royal Blood, it was so short that he could just walk the Banshees or the Roaches across the map once he saw the Banshees harassing his drones. But I don't know if that's something he can repeat here.
Okay, well, let's see what happens. Hellions going into the base here of Dark. We'll find 1 drone. Dark with a prompt pull up. I mean, yeah, 3 drones. It could have been worse, though. Could have been worse for Dark.
Great start, though. And as a few Roaches swap out, he goes up to 5. I think he just does this to scout, to be honest. I feel like he has no hesitation in just sending those Roaches across the map. It's like, yeah, okay, if there's a Banshee, I'm just going to right-click back to my base and let you focus on stutter stepping your way. But actually, instead, this time just goes back to with the Roaches. Doesn't decide to overextend all the way to the natural. A sound decision.
Yeah, they were pretty scattered as well, so would have been a little bit weird. Almost wish he had shown all 6 of them at least together, but it's not going to matter too much. And Dark with a good Overlord spread as well. He's going to see all of the Hellions coming in towards his territory as he takes his 4th at the triangle location. So does Oliveira, who is now heading towards Dark with 2 Banshees. How many drones do you think they kill?
I don't think they'll kill that many. They have Spores in position, 2 Queens in the main. He split Queens between all the bases as well. He shouldn't be able to get a single drone, I think.
Lovely Spore position as well. It's going to greet these Banshees a little bit earlier than they might expect otherwise. So they'll have to turn around right away after having given the heads up to Dark. So it's kind of a weird one, right? Like that Spore positioning, because you look at it and you think, okay, like it's not going to cover the entire mineral line. But it is just, if it is the expected area point of entry, all you need is for the Banshees to be like, oh, not a place I can go, right? Because they give up the surprise element, and that is what's most important there, to start hitting the drones. Like as soon as they've been spotted and getting hit at, it feels already too late to reposition and to try to beat that that sport on repositioning or overseer arriving or anything like that. So lovely positioning, very
exactly.
unusual.
Very, very well done by Dark. Really, just taking the only damage he took was those 3 drones he lost to the Hellion volley. That was about it. So good start for him. He is opting to go into 1-1 road. I guess we probably won't see a Nidus this time around simply because he's opting to go for that link speed, something he didn't go for in the first game. So I have a feeling that variation is kind of an indicator. Maybe he just wants to go into his standard Dark style Ravager lane. I guess I'm wrong. He does go into the Nidus.
All right. Absolutely nasty. I mean, this is kind of his bread and butter, both Dark and Rogue, I would say. Maybe the 2 best players in the world with Niduses and just abusing the power granted to them by the Cabal. So let's see if Dark is able to close things out with that. 2 Roaches here to fend off these Hellions. Only very minimal saturation at that base, thankfully for Dark. It's going to mean that he only loses 3 drones for 4 Hellions, so a good trade all day.
And I feel like, okay, there's no way Oliveira gets caught by this again, right? He should have some idea that a knight is going to his main. And I feel like he does. Like, he already positioned Banshees in his main, and he sees like, okay, this Overlord kind of sus, you know?
Yeah.
So definitely a very good split, I think, of his army right here. Tanks at the front, Marines at the front.
Yeah, nice little straight supply depots. There's the SCVs that you requested. However, the prong on the other side is just as strong, and Dark is collapsing onto everything here. No more tanks to speak of. The Banshees have to come from the lines in the main to try to reinforce here at the front. The Nidus is being dropped right in front of Oliveira as he's forced to evacuate onto those medevacs. So this will have to get lifted up. The SCVs there and the supply depot SimCity all forfeit. And Dark with a very, very powerful push, once again punching through Oliveira's face.
That was absolutely brutal. I mean, it wasn't even close. He didn't even come close to holding it. And maybe Oliveira's approach of just taking his really fast forward space just doesn't work against Dark style. Maybe he needs to respect this a bit much and focus on getting a few more tanks. Maybe even a couple bunkers. Like something Spirit does against this type of push.
That's what I was thinking, is bunkers. And also I feel like the Banshees, I like the idea that the Banshees were in the back because they give the signal that he is expecting the Nidus. But I almost feel like the Banshees should be out on the middle of the map, right? To greet this army and start taxing it very early. And give you a heads up as well of the split of Dark, right? Because they're uncontested out on the map, whereas Marines can deal with this, right? Or a Marauder back there is maybe better suited to deal with the Nidus.
True. Maybe a better split. Yeah, you're right. A few Banshees could just kite or not even kite, but just shoot the Roaches all the way down to his base.
Yeah,
maybe
it kind of
a single drop
lag
in the main.
Yeah, it kind of puts the attack on a timer a little bit for Dark, right? It might force him to make decisions more hastily and yeah, I mean, overall, I think the Banshees out on the map are probably better. That said, this time around, Dark had much better creep spread, so it's not like we would have almost hoped for a mistake from him in not bringing some queens to account for something like that. Whereas in the first game, that wasn't an option, so I really think that Oliveira should have just 100% had the Banshees out there, or the one Banshee that he had remaining. Now the game feels impossible.
This is just BM.
Yeah.
Using the Nidus to block the TC so they can't land. The creep will also remain there for a while. I mean, Oliveira is doing a great job of holding with these tanks. There are a lot of tanks producing 2x2.
Yeah, great target firing from those tanks onto the Ravagers as well.
Is this recoverable?
I want to say no, right? But, I mean, 2-2 is also finishing for Dark. It's not like he was waiting for that. Now starting a Hive, it looks extremely difficult for Oliveira. I mean, I think Dark can just sit back and maybe go into Vipers or something like that and end the game. But yeah, I mean, that was very impressive nonetheless, like you were saying, from Oliveira. Like his 3 or 4 tanks did the best job that they possibly could have at targeting all the Ravagers in the back and forcing that push from Dark to retreat for the time being. But he is now locked onto 3 base, and I don't know what he can do.
Yeah, I mean, even Oliveira pulling some Marines away from the defense to clear creep, and that's just going to end up terribly for him. If these Roaches run in and start targeting those unprotected tanks.
Yeah, that's the signal for Dark to go, right? We've been talking about it. He's not a player that is waiting for his timings a lot of the time. I mean, you know, he doesn't care. It's like, oh, 2-2 is about to finish. I don't care. Like, you just moved out. That's a lot of Marines. That's the opportunity that I'm going to leap on. And yeah, it's going to close out the game for him. A game that was and felt very much over. A great series between these two. But it will be the Korean monster, Dark, coming on top.